The past few weeks have been a time of reckoning for both the legacy media and the access media shills, especially as it becomes clear that Fantastic Four First Step isn't shaping up to be the big box office win that they had all initially lobbied for, and many of them seem surprised, frustrated, and even bitter about this situation, perhaps because it means that the well of access that they've all benefited from for years has finally dried up for them. But for anybody that's been honestly covering the industry for years now, the Fantastic Four flopping wasn't really a surprise because the writing has been on the wall for years now. If I had to point out the number one issue here, it's that, in my opinion, Marvel president Kevin Feige isn't necessarily the golden boy genius that everybody thought he was. While nobody could argue that up until Avengers Endgame, the MCU was doing extremely well, his rookie-level mistakes since that success only highlight that perhaps too much credit was given to him, or if nothing else, that Feige worked best with a specific team of competent executives, producers, and directors around him, and once he was left to his own devices, it turned out that he wasn't such a hotshot after all. Everybody in the mainstream media seemed very excited when Feige's former boss, Ike Perlmutter, was gradually pushed out of Marvel and Disney starting in 2015 for some reason. But it seems like as much as Kevin Feige may have loathed him, Perlmutter, on the other hand, knew how to rein Feige in, putting him in his place when needed and curbing a lot of his sillier creative ideas. In addition, MCU director-producers like Jon Favreau and Joss Whedon were crucial in helping launch Feige's shared Marvel universe, but they're not really involved anymore. Even James Gunn, who I don't think is a good fit for DC these days, actually suited Marvel's style, and Gunn was instrumental in helping set up the blueprint for the entire Infinity Saga. And I know that the Russo brothers have delivered some stinkers in recent years, but they were quite good on their MCU movies at the time as well. I guess what I'm saying here is that perhaps Kevin Feige was an okay bureaucratic executive, but he was in fact very lucky to be surrounded by more talented creatives that helped him turn the MCU into something that was bigger than the sum of its parts. But since Avengers Endgame, the MCU has relied much more on Kevin Feige creatively, and ultimately, I think that it's the main reason why the franchise is currently in shambles. In this video, I'm going to go over the actual box office receipts for the MCU since Avengers Endgame, so we can take a look at all of Kevin Feige's flops, his successes, and where Fantastic Four lands amongst them. But before we begin, please take a second to like and subscribe. As an independent news source, any support I can get from you would be greatly appreciated. After Avengers Endgame, if Kevin Feige were smart, he would have actually scaled down the amount of MCU movies we got in order to let the franchise breathe a little, because when you let audiences miss something they really enjoyed, then there's some excitement when it returns. But between Kevin Feige's poor reading of the map creatively, Disney's greed and aggressive streaming ambitions, and the company's obsession with identity politics, the MCU got caught up in the perfect storm of crap, which ultimately led to its own undoing. And this is not a dude trust me bro situation. Let's look at the actual data that confirms exactly what I'm saying. Now, I'm going by the assumption here that in order for a movie to be profitable, the worldwide box office has to be at least 2.5 times its production budget. And even though in our day and age in Hollywood, that number is usually 3 or more due to studio shenanigans, but we're going to be generous and go with the lower estimates here. Immediately after the wildly successful Avengers Endgame in 2019, you had Spider-Man Far From Home, which was, of course, profitable. The thing is, though, it's actually a Sony movie because Sony has the movie rights to the Spider-Man character. So Disney made some money on it, but most of the profit actually went to Sony themselves. Then you had a series of movies that came out in 2021 that were very much brainchilds of Feige and Disney, like Black Widow, which flopped, Shang-Chi, which barely broke even, and The Eternals, which flopped, marking a very bad year for Kevin Feige. Now, at the time we were told that the movies didn't fail because of their quality or because they were driven by certain agendas, but rather because of the couve. But that same year, Sony released Spider-Man No Way Home, which did phenomenally, making close to $2 billion worldwide in spite of the international illness, and once again, Disney only got a portion of the movie's massive box office, so not really a big win here either. Nevertheless, 2022 saw Kevin Feige getting some lucky breaks from 3 pretty crappy MCU movies that were released that year, but somehow squeaked by. Doctor Strange 2 was billed as a direct follow-up to Spider-Man No Way Home, which certainly helped its ticket sales, even though Strange was something of a loser side character in his own movie. Thor Love and Thunder completely disrespected the Thor character and was barely profitable at all, but at least it didn't lose money. And Wakanda Forever however, was mainly successful because it was billed as something of a tribute to the late Chadwick Boseman, who had passed away, but it too was completely forgettable and made far less money than its predecessor, signaling a pattern of decline that we'd see in years to come. And anybody that was looking carefully at this point in time could have already seen some cracks in the MCU armor, but on the surface it wasn't a full-blown disaster yet. The crisis looming at Disney Marvel would only become clear with 2023's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, as this movie flopped big time, which was especially embarrassing as it was supposed to launch a whole new Kang storyline within the MCU, which ultimately ended up being abandoned. And when I reviewed that movie on this channel, I actually said that I thought that Kevin Feige should step down because I felt that he had lost the plot quite literally at that point. And I still believe that was true, but luckily for Feige, again, he was bailed out by the next MCU movie, which was James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and yes, that movie did make some kind of profit, but not only was it not huge, the movie itself was basically a leftover from the days of the Infinity Saga, based on a script that James Gunn had written years earlier. The only reason it came out in 2023 was because Gunn was fired in 2018, and then later rehired by Disney, which ultimately delayed the movie's release by at least 3 years. But even if that movie was generally well received, any goodwill it built with audiences was immediately forgotten following that when we got The Marvels, which is one of the biggest box office disasters of all time. It didn't just lose money, it lost a ton of money. And again, with a bit of luck, Kevin Feige was once again bailed out by somebody else when we got Deadpool and Wolverine, which was more of a Ryan Reynolds-driven production that was greenlit by ex-Disney CEO Bob Chapek, and not necessarily something that Kevin Feige actually ever wanted or was really involved with creatively. And even here, any points this movie scored with viewers were all wiped off the board with the release of Captain America: Brave New World, a movie that not only flopped, but after being reshot 3 times was still barely watchable. And if Thunderbolts was supposed to somehow move the needle for Feige, it ended up being another flop, although I will say that out of all the crappy Feige-driven movies that came out after Endgame, I think that Thunderbolts was mildly tolerable, even if it wasn't all that great. And when it comes to Fantastic Four, which is still in theaters but on the road to flopping, it may not do as poorly at the box office as, let's say, The Marvels or Captain Falcon, mainly because of how expensive those productions were. But this Fantastic Four movie was supposed to see Kevin Feige's MCU turn a new leaf, and based on what we're seeing, it looks more like the end of an era rather than the start of one. And if you ask me, I think Feige should just complete the Avengers movies he's currently working on, release them, put the MCU on hiatus, and then retire. In any case, thanks for watching my video, and if you enjoy my analysis, please make sure to like and subscribe, as it would really help an independent creator like myself. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day!
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.